Right, welcome along to ShrimpNet. Thank you for joining us as usual. It's the podcast of the Shrimp Supporters Trust of Morecambe FC, obviously. I should point that out because some people don't know. There you go. After a turbulent few days on the field, joining Joel and I for some chat, analysis, and a heart-to-heart on the increasingly interesting situation we have. We've got our boardroom mole, the Shrimps version of Gary Lineker of tweeting the truth. It's James Wakefield. James, welcome along to the ShrimpNet. Podcast number 30, James.
I think I've already done about 17 of them as well.
Yeah, I think you probably have. We would have been joined by a guest, and I tried about 4 or 5 supporters who were all otherwise engaged, because I was looking for some, shall we say, some perspective on the turbulence, as I was calling it in the intro there. But unfortunately, they were all busy, or maybe fortunately, because it's left us 3 who are all, well, I won't say eternally positive, but we like to put a positive spin on things. So starting with Shrewsbury at the Greenhouse Meadow on Saturday, put some positive spin on that if you can, Joel.
I will put. Oh, pardon me. Sorry, that's going to peak a little bit on the sound, isn't it? But I'll put what I'd say is a realistic spin. I always like to think, because I think it's easy to get guided by result, and I don't think it was a 3-1 game. In the balance of play itself, in terms of chances created, which Shrewsbury managed to do through mainly set pieces, they bossed us, and I'll speak about that in a minute. But in terms of the play itself, it was relatively even. I thought it wasn't amazing from either side, but there were some decent little bits. I thought we put some nice moves together, worked it to around the edge of the box, just didn't really get much clinical edge to ourselves. On the flip side, I thought Shrewsbury they weren't amazing, but they had some good tricks up their sleeves. They knew when to switch play. They kind of drew you in a bit one side and then switch play, which is always quite a good method. They had the centre back, right? I think it was Pennington. He had a good knack for kind of driving forwards with the ball, which is always a tricky thing to deal with. And I think they just did a few smarter things in how they kind of. I know, they're a bit more of an experienced side than us, and they were just smarter in some of the things they did. They kind of knew when to shove lots and lots of players into the box. They knew to switch to play. They had a couple of little tricks to getting forward, and that's what's ultimately, I think, been the difference in the game. Obviously, the real thing here is set pieces, and that has to be talked about. And the first one, obviously, it's we've all had mad moments like that. Anybody who's ever played football knows that they've just kind of Crowley, he's misjudged the ball, and instinctively or whatever, he's just shot his hand out because he doesn't want it to go past him. And it's mad, but it's one of those things. It's one of those reactions that sometimes your body just does, and there's not much you can always do about it. And obviously, the following 2 set pieces, it's funny coming a week after. We'll speak about set pieces quite a lot tonight. Obviously, I think in his post match on the Tuesday night's game, Don Love has actually kind of hit the nail on the head. Coming away from the Bolton game, I remember Ian Evatt was very, very complimentary towards Farron Rawson and how he dominated everything in the box. And in these couple of games, I feel like what Shrewsbury and what Charlton have been able to do is they've made sure to direct their set pieces a little in the areas that Faz can't quite get to, because he's operating as that kind of zonal person in the centre of the box that you see a lot of teams do these days. And I remember when we got promoted, Jan Songo was playing that role for us back in League 2. But if you kind of lob it right to the back post, which Charlton did a couple of times, or hit it to the front post and have a runner coming across, then there are areas that Faz can't really get to if you're in that zonal area in the middle. And that's what they've done. And they've exposed spaces, and ultimately it's not an excuse. While Rawson is our best aerial defender, other players need to step up and be sharper to that and be more alive to that. And that's something we're obviously going to have to work on and make sure we're thinking about more in the next few games. But it's disappointing that those lapses have ultimately been a large cause for our downfall over these past 2 games, because it's a vital time of the season, and I think we've generally defended set pieces relatively well this season. but then to come unstuck like this when people do something that's relatively simple, just hit it away from our big man. It's disappointing, but yeah, that's how it's gone. Hopefully, the team can kind of rectify it in the coming weeks.
I think I'll come to you now, James, and I'll agree wholeheartedly with what you said there. And I listened to Donald Love after the game, and I thought he did it the nail on the head there, in the fact that Faz wins everything, and as soon as it doesn't go to Faz, it's proved to be our Achilles heel in the last 2 games. But that's not been the case all season. But I move at the stage we are now with 9 games left. The first goal is always it changes games, and that it was a daft penalty to give away. It did look deliberate. You can't say anything against it, but that goal immediately gives Shrewsbury the freedom to, well, we can just sit back now, and that's what keeps happening. They just sit back, and that's what they did, And you're right, Joel. We played some really nice stuff at Greenhouse Meadow, but we fell short at the edge of the box because by the time they'd got a goal up, they were like, well, go on, and what have you got? And we have failed time and time again when people have sat back. And that's been the issue. So the first goal, tragic though it was, we need to get that first goal to stand any chance in any of these, particularly these away games. Do you not think, James?
Yeah, I think, certainly the 2 games were quite similar in that it felt like we were trying to climb up a hill, having been sort of, shoved down to the bottom, and the other lads run up it, and you're just always running after them. I thought actually Shrewsbury were better than Charlton. I thought Shrewsbury did a better job of keeping us at arm's length and stopping us creating chances. And I didn't really have any complaints about the Shrewsbury result. And they're a decent side. That's the reason that they're just outside the playoffs, and they've been performing pretty well actually for most of the season. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Freeze. I think getting that first goal or just not conceding it makes a huge difference. And there's 2 games where we've conceded quite early goals, and in some case, not particularly brilliant goals, just scrappy goals. I absolutely agree with you guys on the need to defend set pieces better. But the chance of set pieces going in the goal are always relatively small, and there's not been a lot gone our way in those 2 first halves, which is not to say that we performed well in those 2 first halves, but still, it's not been a lot gone our way. But yeah, I thought Shrewsbury were decent. I've got no complaints about the Shrewsbury result. I thought that was fair.
And it's easy to sit here and dissect it and be wise after the event. Derek made 1 sub on Saturday, and we got to see a little bit of Nias, and that's fair enough. That's it, that was his decision. Maybe he was thinking, well, I'll save people for Tuesday night. I can understand all that. I still stand by it. That could have gone a different way. The game could have gone a different way. I don't think the Charlton game could have gone a different way. And we will move on to Charlton now. We didn't defend the set pieces particularly well. Everybody thought that Leeburn was offside for the first one, but he wasn't. He was well onside. And Donnell moved out to try and catch him offside, but he unfortunately moved out after the ball had been played. And it was a good decision by the linesman, much as though it kills me to say that. But we were, Donnell was, I don't like pointing fingers, but Donnell was ball watching horribly for the third. And Corey Blackett-Taylor, who has never scored 2 goals in a game before, he'll never have 2 easier goals. Never have 2 easier goals. It was like, just a tap in from a yard and a tap in from 2 yards. And then we've got a mountain to climb. The positives to that were we had a pretty good sort of 10-minute spell in the second half. Pulled the goal back. Nias looked positive. Crowley was pulling the strings. And we looked at that point as if we could get some fresh legs on and change it up a bit. We might get something. And I have to make the point, Charlton made a couple of subs and their subs got involved and they scored a 4th. And it's easy to be wise after the event, but when you're 3-1 down and chasing the game, I just don't understand why he didn't make any subs. And that's a frustrating thing from the fans' point of view. And I'm taking this, with a pinch of salt off social media, because obviously there's people calling for Derek's head and, fans are unhappy. They paid the money and it was a pretty abject first half, Joel.
Yeah. let's talk about subs first. I think it's always a funny one with subs because it's easy sitting on the touchline and going, manager to do this, to do that. But then what exactly would you do? Now, that's not me saying that Derek was definitely right not to make any subs.
No, no,
But
no.
I think if you're evaluating this kind of situation, you think the way to think about it is what could be done, why might he not have done that, rather than just thinking he's wrong and just kind of getting all
Exactly.
kind of dig your heels in and think that he's dug his heels in. But like, I don't think I mean, you won't want to take Crowley off. We don't have any
No.
we don't really have anybody to replace Shaw or Weir in that kind of game because Taylor's injured. We didn't want to really take the ass off. I would maybe argue for the who are on for Hunter, probably maybe.
Yeah, that's what
or
I
maybe Mayer. Because Mayer wasn't having quite as much of an effect this game, but maybe a change at winger. But I don't think a formation change was really called for at that point. But yeah, that is a tricky one with subs because it's easy to kind of point fingers and say what could and should have been done, but like offering solutions is a bit of a different thing. But yeah, in terms of the game itself, that just a disastrous first half, and I thought Charlton were very good. I thought they put some nice little bits of passing together. Some of the movement was nice. They were just very. I thought they just looked a bit sharper to things. I don't know if maybe the Shrewsbury game had knocked the wind out of our sails a little bit. The way we can concede the set pieces, and then again conceding another set piece goal relatively early on. It takes me back to that first half of the season, the Stephen Robinson, where just the easy set piece goals we give away, they're just constantly like just battering the wins at yourselves. And obviously, we've talked about it just before as well. The momentum switches, and it's obviously part of it is teams can sit back more, they can put an extra man behind the ball, but also it's you take a knock to your confidence. The other team gets a bit of wind in their sails, and they feel like they can get grooving a little bit more. So it's just silly goals. I know it's a cliche, but yeah, like you said, goals change games, and that's kind of what's happened a bit. In terms of positives, I think there was some really nice stuff that did get played in little parts here and there. Again, we've not really managed to convert it as well as we might want to in the final third. And I agree. Nias, and I think I can't remember if this is before or during the pod that you said this, but yes, Nias had a very good second half. I thought it was interesting. I think he looked physically like he's a big guy and he will obviously be able to handle himself, but he's not played for a year, and it looked like he didn't really back himself to get into a tussle with the defender or have a completely belt past somebody really quick. He didn't really look like he didn't quite back himself to do that, which is kind of understandable once you've not played professional football for a year. So I think that'll come, and I think there were a couple of flashes in that second half. Obviously, the run he did for the goal. There was a shot he had quite late on where he got a little bit of space to run into, and he just drove at the defender. And the defender looked like a rabbit in the headlights. It was, these, and a part of that is, I think, just you could see bits of his technical ability, and that he is why he was playing at the level he has done previously. Now, and obviously, he's seen as an up and down figure in the Premier League, but ultimately, if you're good enough to play in the Premier League and score a few goals there, you can probably do a good job at League One. So you could see bits of his ability that are a bit of a cut above, and some of the turns, some of the touches, some of the weights of his pass. So yeah, it'll be hopefully it's something he's able to kick on from, and those 90 minutes will be invaluable to helping him do that. Hopefully, so yeah. I imagine he'll feature next game. I'm not sure if there'll be a formation change or we'll stick with the same 4-3-3, but it's good to see him kick on because it looks like he might be able to contribute before the end of the season, which could be really, really important.
And like I said, strange no subs. I don't understand it, but that's Derek. That's fine. It is what it is. Maybe he thought the game was gone, and in the end, it proved to be correct. But James, you said you thought Shrewsbury were quite good. Does that mean you didn't rate Charlton? Because I thought they looked pretty decent.
No, I thought Charlton were decent. I thought they were ruthless in that first half. And I thought the fourth goal was excellent. It was a really good goal. It was a lovely bit of movement and a good finish. That was a good goal. They cut us open with that one. It's not. I just thought that the 4-1 scoreline probably flattered Charlton ever so slightly. They were the better team, but it did flatter them ever so slightly. my frustration, I think, well, to address the subs thing, you know, at the point that just before they scored their fourth goal, that's when we were playing the best in the game. That's when actually we were managing to piece and moves together. That's when we were creating chances. We'd just been in their box, we'd had a corner or two, and actually at that point you wouldn't change anything because at that point the team was actually playing quite well. And ifs and buts and maybes, but had we got a goal back at that point, then suddenly you're thinking, shit, this is Doncaster again. And all right, fine, it's Charlton and it's not Doncaster. But still, a goal at that point could have completely changed the momentum. And then what happened was they went up the other end and actually they scored the best goal of the game. They scored the one goal that was just excellent. And I think all the criticism then comes on after that. So I thought that actually we were playing quite well at 3-1 down. And I thought that there was a good chance we'd score a goal. And I can see why nothing changed. I think the other thing is you never know who's sitting on the bench who actually has got a bit of a knock, or really you don't want to risk them because they just need another few days of rest before the next game. And we've got a small squad, and we're always going to have a couple of injuries, and you just can't afford to have injuries at key points in key points in the squad at this point in the season. I mean, the difference between the teams that get relegated now, the teams that get relegated at the end of the season, and now in the smaller squads is those teams that keep their enough of their players fit. And us, Accrington, Cambridge, we're all in that category of not having big squads. So I think there's an element of we were playing actually our best phase in the game was just before they scored their fourth. And then the other thing is you just got to you can't just change players. But I agree with Joel. I was really encouraged to see Umar play 90 minutes. I wasn't expecting to see 90 minutes out of him. And I thought it was an energetic 90 minutes. He didn't run out of gas.
No, that's what I'm saying. He actually got better, didn't he?
Yeah. It's almost like he found it. He found his match fitness. But he's obviously been keeping himself in very decent shape. You don't play 90 minutes against a football against a good footballing team like Charlton and do that easily. So it was really impressive.
I looked at the Charlton side before kickoff, and obviously Tyrese Campbell, Corey Blackett-Taylor, and Leeburn all got pedigree. Obviously, Campbell and Leeburn, sons of former Premier League players. And I was thinking, well, they've got some pace up front there, so it's no wonder they gave us trouble. But Innes, the centre half, was absolute man mountain. He was absolutely fabulous for them, and he looked about twice the size of Nias. But I mean, Leeburn, he's got his own weather. He's that tall. I mean, blimey, he was.
Yeah, completely. I think the other thing I thought on the night was, and I was pleased with how we came out in the second half. I did think the team talk in that Charlton dressing room would have been along the lines of, "This is the win we need to be safe," and we're 3-0 up. So there was motivation in that Charlton team not to concede too much in the second half, because they are now in a much safer position. Had they lost the other night, then they wouldn't be. They'd still be in danger of getting dragged back into it. But I think you'd probably say that Charlton are safe now.
Yeah, and looking at the side they've got, I mean, they seem to have a thing about Phantom the Opera masks, didn't they?
Yeah.
Keeper had one, and 2 outfield players were wearing them. But the lad who was on loan, Claire, the right back, what a good lad he was, and he went on that run. It didn't look like anybody could stop him, but then
I think he's there permanently. I think Sean.
Is he?
We played him last season, and he got turned inside out by Arthur Nahua.
Yeah, I do remember that. And I remember thinking, who's that? Because he looked solid the other night.
Yeah, he played centre back last season, where he's
exactly.
Right back.
More
natural.
And he looked a lot more comfortable at right back. But and he had pace to burn as well. And I was like, blimey, it just goes to show you that those, they've got legs, and it does make a slight difference. Particularly when we were chasing the game, because I make the point, and you're absolutely right, we were playing well at the point they scored their 4th goal. And we had just had a spate of corners and a couple of sort of like efforts where the keeper had sort of dived, and it was like, oh, that was unlucky, and etc., etc. But that's what we had to do. At 3-1, we had to force the game. And unfortunately, both Jensen and Liam Shaw were just about 10 yards too further forward. And that's why I made the point they'd made the subs, and their subs had the legs. And that's where it made the difference. But you're right, it was a good goal. Fraser's goal was a great goal. Took it 1-2 on his right foot and then passed it into the net with his left. It was a great goal. And I've no complaints about either of those results. But I want to move on, and I've got the fixtures coming up. And obviously we've got Oxford on Saturday. New manager bounce, which I say every week, we don't know if it exists or not, but Liam Manning. We've got Liam Manning, and then we've got Liam Manning's old team, MK Dons, who seem to have the hoodoo over us the week after, which obviously we'll talk about next week. But nobody can be surprised that Oxford have turned to Liam Manning. He's probably, what is it, about 20 minutes from Milton Keynes to Oxford. So he obviously lives somewhere local, so he's probably handy. But the point being is he was a good manager at Milton Keynes. Milton Keynes lost the spine of the team with particularly Parrott losing him on loan, Twine going to Burnley, and the centre half who was pretty decent who they had to sell on. I think he went to Swansea, didn't he? So
Darwin,
yeah. So he's like, from that point of view, he lost his spine of the team. You can quite understand why they aren't quite the same side. But Manning, they've got a passing style at Oxford already. It's going to be interesting to see how he adapts that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one for Manning because while he did do very, very excellently last season, and there was always going to be a drop off when you lose players like Twine and Darling because they're such good players for this level.
Yeah,
there's always going to be a drop off. You kind of think, well, you know what? They'll fall away into mid table. They've got enough quality. Should have enough quality in their squad to be fine. They'll fall away into mid table, and they'll go again in a couple of years on the rebuild. But to fall away in the dramatic fashion they did was poor. I know the recruitment wasn't that great, but it's still pretty poor. They've got some good players in that squad still. And yeah, to fall away in the dramatic fashion they did does not reflect particularly well on Manning in that instance. Although that said, he's obviously quite a good manager and he probably will continue to do quite well in the game. But obviously this season it's just not gone for him. It's interesting because I've spoken to a few people about the appointment and he's kind of seen as very much a good long-term option because he buys into the model that Oxford are probably going to want to play, like you say, passing football, working under a director of football as well. That's the kind of model they want to have at the club, and he works well in that, and it should work quite nicely. You think long-term, even if they did get relegated, I think they'd probably be all right because they've got the funds to be able to get back up again pretty quickly. But obviously Grant McCann was the other main name rumoured, and I think there was a feeling that he probably would have given you a bit more bounce, just having that bit more nous and experience at the level than somebody like Manning, who is more of a kind of long-term project guy. That said, Manning did very, very well coming in on the ashes of Russell Martin at MK Dons last season at quite a dramatic point where Martin had left very early in the season and he didn't really have much time to change things around, and he was quite a good natural fit there, so it worked out. So it's just so hard to judge these things. A new manager bounce, how much of a thing is it really? It's not, it's a heavy game to come into with a bit of new manager bounce because you think you'd want somebody who's on the beach really, but coming in to try and put your new ideas forward against another side who's scrapping in the same area of the table with you, right down at the bottom. It's a tricky one, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of approach that Derek goes for. Just talking of Derek's approaches quickly, actually, I think it's a lot of people have made points about it being negative a lot of the time, but I don't think it really has. The 4-3-3 we played against Charlton was incredibly attacking. We've quite often played a midfield three of Shaw, Weir, and Crowley. That's ridiculously attacking. That's really attacking, and Love is a fullback who gets up the pitch a lot when he's given the freedom to. We've got really attacking players, and when we were in League Two, we scored and conceded the second most amount of goals in the division. If you total up our for and against column, it's the second highest in the division. If anything, we were too exciting to our detriment because we conceded too many goals, and that might have stopped us getting automatic promotion. So I know he's not a manager who likes to have 60% possession, but it's not really necessarily indicative of being defensive. It's just a certain way of setting it up, and when it's worked well, it's made us quite an exciting and attacking side who create a lot of really good chances. And obviously this season it's not worked so well. There's a lot of reasons why. I think a lot of it has been, unfortunately, obviously he's not been able to mould the squad the way he wants to, and with off the field stuff that must have made it really, really difficult to quite recruit the players he wants to. I think there is a bit of a lack of balance. I think we lack defensive players in midfield who can give our attacking midfielders the freedom that they need to go forwards, and I think we've kind of seen that in that 4-3-3 with Shaw, Weir, and Crowley. They're wonderful, wonderful footballers, but it's not quite really work maybe as well as we want to. Sometimes worked a bit better when we've had Gibson in there. Ultimately, Gibson's a converted fullback who is doing a great job in midfield, but it's his first season in that role, which is completely different to what he's used to. And also, Max Melbourne, our first choice left back, has been injured for much of the season. So we've needed Gibbo at left back. So there's a lot of things that have kind of unfortunately gone against us and made it really, really tough if we're going to. Yeah. And I don't think we have been that negative in our style at all. I think we've often been quite attacking. It's just we haven't I think the intention's been there, hasn't always worked out because we maybe might not have been able to have the balance in the side that we might ideally want. But yeah, I've gone off on one there, but yeah.
No, it's fine. No, looking at the fixtures, Oxford have got a massive part to play in their own their own survival or their own downfall. Because I'm looking at the fixtures and they've got us, and then they've got Cheltenham at home, and then they have Peterborough away, Sheffield Wednesday at home, Port Vale away, Bolton at home, Portsmouth at home, Barnsley away. But their last two games are at Forest Green away and Accrington at home. So it's very much they must be thinking, well, looking at that, we can probably do enough, hopefully, to stay up because they can affect Cheltenham, ourselves, Forest Green, and Accrington. Now, looking at that, they've been in pretty poor form recently. Like I say, I don't know if new manager bounce does exist, James, but the first goal is primarily what's going to change that game on Saturday, isn't it?
No, honestly, I mean, if it goes the way of the last couple of games, then yeah, that would certainly appear to be the case. But I just don't know. New manager bounce, I think it exists when a manager gets a transfer window quite a lot of the time. Yeah. It exists when dressing room's been lost and the atmosphere's gone at a club. I think just the freshness will change something. But statistically, if you take away the impact of a transfer window and any real negative situation that exists at a club, I'm not sure there was one of those at Oxford. It doesn't exist at all. So I don't know. I don't really care though. Oxford can do what the hell they like. I just care about us playing well on Saturday. That's all we can do. And you look at the fixture list, and we've got some good teams to play. But by the time we play one or two of them, one or two will be on the beach or in a safe position. And equally, it doesn't matter on any given Saturday or any given Tuesday night. If you play well, you can win, and we've proven that season in, season out. So I just want us to focus on ourselves and to focus entirely on ourselves. Ignore the fixture list. Ignore the chances of winning the games. We've got 9 games left. Just win 3 of them. Be a right good side for 3 of them. Get a gritty draw, and we're probably safe.
Well, me being the eternal optimist or a complete loon, I sat there on Monday night after the Shrewsbury defeat and was chatting with mates because we played a quiz on a Monday night. And I said, I quite fancy going to Barnsley. And 2 of them, Posh and Yozza, chirped up with, oh, when's that? And I went, April Fool's Day. And they were like, oh, yeah, Barnsley away. I went, yeah, but we beat them at home. And they were like, yeah. So what's your reasoning? And I went, look, the worst side in the world, the worst team ever in any division in England, particularly, will go away and they will win 2 games out of 24 away from home. I said, and we've only won 1. I said, so I'm thinking we beat Barnsley at home. They're thinking, they're on really good form lately. They're playing really, really well. They've got Adam Phillips banging them in. He's scored 4 in 6. So it's like, oh yeah, marvellous. And I'm thinking, yeah, I fancy us at Barnsley. I don't know why. I fancy we're going to go, we could beat Oxford. That would be great. If we could get anything, if we got a 0-0 draw at MK Dons, I would celebrate like we won the bloody league because we didn't look capable against them in either of the games this season. And then we've got the Barnsley away. Then we've got Plymouth at home. And Plymouth's recent away form isn't great, I have to say. And they'll be under pressure. Then we've got Portsmouth down at Fratton Park. Then we've got Wickham at home. Now Wickham, Matt Bloomfield taken over from Gareth Ainsworth's been there since the Jurassic period. And obviously it looks like he's trying to implement a slightly different system. So maybe that won't work on the day. Then we've got Charlton away. Well, I think we can write that one off because it's a bit of pace they've got, but you never know, do you? and then obviously Lincoln at home and Exeter away. So from our point of view, you 3 wins and a couple of draws, do you reckon would do it, Joel?
I think 4 wins for me personally, but
Okay.
Well, actually, no, I'll have it. What's 3 times 9? Oh, sorry, I'm actually not very good at maths anymore. Yeah, maybe 3 wins and a few draws might do it, but I'd be looking for 4 or 5 wins.
Yeah,
really,
no,
if we
yeah,
can.
3 wins
But-
and 3 draws. No, I want 4 wins.
Yeah, but yeah, just I mean, I've actually what I've got up with Morecambe FC feed on Twitter has done a very, very good kind of color-coded representation of all the fixtures. It's
That's what I've got.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Yeah. If I just want to circle back round actually to
Can't
the
see
point
it.
you made about the Accrington Oxford game, which is the last game of the season,
Yeah.
which it's funny those games because you kind of want to think it's a negative because one of those teams is going to pick up points, but also
That's right.
while those teams are going to lose points.
Yeah.
And at that game, so say we are, it's a fair possibility that it's us, Accrington and Oxford in the mix on the final day. And if we're a point or 2 clear, then we're kind of up pretty much because only one of them can win.
True.
So
Yeah, but look who Accrington played second to last game of the season.
Cambridge, yeah, and obviously, yeah.
So you've got the same thing, and it's like,
Oxford,
oh, what
and
game
obviously
is
Oxford
that?
had Forest Green Rovers second last game of the season. So
I know, it's
I
crazy.
think but they're slightly different because it's very likely. Well, it's very likely that Forest Green Rovers will be down by the middle of April, and it's very likely that Cambridge could well be down by the time the last game of the season comes around. So it's such a funny one, and like it's so hard to weigh these things up because it's form. It's are the team on the beach? Are they not on the beach, but they're bottling it because the pressure's on? You just have no idea. You know, like you said, Plymouth's away form is just. I could make a logic for basically any scenario.
Yeah,
and
right.
but like you mentioned about Barnes. I think Barnes is the one that makes me think, oh God, yeah, that's the one that I'm kind of prepared to write off maybe a little. I mean, obviously, I'd like to win and I'd be prepared to write off but there is something very Morecambe about us banishing our bad away form at Barnsley away, who are
all I'm
flying.
thinking is you take yourself back to this time last season, and as you said off air, we're approaching the crunch time like we had last season, where we had that really terrible period where we got hammered at Shrewsbury, we got hammered at Wigan, and everybody was like, "Those are the games we've got to win. We've got to go to Charlton next week." Oh, hang on.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Charlton we're kind of on the beach at that point. In fairness, but
exactly.
But
and if you look at that could be Portsmouth away, couldn't it? Portsmouth away, they might well be on the beach because I think they're still sort of like clutching at the playoffs, but they're so hit and miss. They're so hit and miss. You never know.
I think
So
realistically, the only team outside the playoffs that are realistically close enough to catch are Wycombe,
Yes,
but I
that's
don't
true.
think they'll have the consistency to
Well,
be there. But I don't know if it'll be a done deal by the time that we play them.
Exactly.
However, I do say it would be fun to beat Barnsley away, but I'd happily lose 8-0 at Barnsley if it means we win 1-0 at MK Dons.
True. I'm looking
MK Dons, to be honest.
Looking at that, and if we were to beat Oxford, and this is all supposition, obviously, if we were to beat Oxford and beat MK Dons, then with the remaining 7 games, you would be looking at just literally get something from the home games against Wycombe and Lincoln. And then hopefully, if you could snatch a draw at Plymouth and then get something at either Portsmouth or maybe Exeter. You just don't.
Charlton's.
Yeah, it's all doable. The point being is we're still in there, we're still fighting. And that's what we've got to do, James. We're like you always say, never give up, never give in.
Yeah, I mean, we're a year on from the.
That's a quote from Galaxy Quest, by the way.
I'll get all my daughters to come in a minute and read you the Wakefield family motto. By the way, if you do decide to go to Barnsley, I say this as a proud Lancastrian, Barnsley is the best provincial night out in the UK. It is amazing.
I know.
Fantastic. Anyway,
where was Charlie's stag do?
Exactly. Second night in Barnsley. Amazing. Every single bar has got a booking Bronco, and Greg's is 24 hours with a bouncer. So anyway, put that to one side. Yeah, we are. It's funny, like everything that you guys have just been saying, I agree with all of those different theories and everything else. But we've got 9 games left. We can control how we play them, and we can't control, who's coming to the game, be worried about this, who's going to bottle it, who's going to be on the beach, who's going to be carrying a couple of injuries. There's so many variables. So frankly, bollocks to all. All we can do is go into those 9 games and try and get all the results we need to stay up. And we've done it so many times before. Like the factor for me that's more powerful than anything is that Morecambe doesn't get relegated. We don't know how to do it. And there are other teams who've gone up and down like yo-yos, and teams that are clubs that are well run, really, really good clubs. But we don't know we don't know the meaning of the word. So as long as everybody actually gets themselves to a place of right bollocks to this, like let's show some spirit and let's circle the wagons and let's show everybody what Morecambe's about again, then we've got every chance. We don't have a chance if we start to sort of fall into infighting and arguing amongst each other and slagging each other off on Facebook and everything else. And that's not to say I don't respect everybody's opinion. Completely understand everybody's opinion, respect everybody's opinion. But the club has got to get together, because you do not survive in League One if you start to argue amongst yourselves. You just don't. And there's only a handful of other clubs in the league who are trying to compete with the budget that we've got. And they're all around us, all of them. That's the reality of it. And the gap is massive. To those who say that, well, we shouldn't be in League One, then we've got no business being in League One, sod that as well. Like, what's the point of sport? What's the point of integrity in football if you can't aspire to doing better? So we've just got to literally circle the wagons and go right up yours to the rest of the league and do exactly what Morecambe's done every single season for 103 years. Just got to do it again, and that's it. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. That matters more than who's on the beach, who's not on the beach, who's carrying an injury into a game, who's going to bottle it, and all these other factors. Let them worry about that. We've just got to get together and be more.
I think the leaving the Oxford game on a positive is they came to us very, very, very a very good side flying last year. They scored in the second minute through Taylor, and we were staring down the barrel. And by half time, we were 2-1 up. And I shall now remind you of possibly the second or maybe equal first greatest save I've ever seen live by Trevor Carson, which was equivalent to a save made a few years ago by Joe Lewis at Peterborough, which everybody in the ground thought it was in, apart from Joe Lewis and on that night, Trevor Carson, which was one of the most fantastic clawed back saves I've ever seen, because it looked like it was past him and he managed to claw it up and over. And we won 2-1. And that was following on from the Charlton game. So it was like, crikey, look at that. You know, we can do it. And Oxford are not the side they were, Joel.
No, exactly. They're a far cry from where they were last season. I mean, last season when we played them at home, that was the nail in their playoff push. Really, I mean, just to briefly circle back on the point we've just been making, like you say, you can't really predict how the on the beach is the pressure going to tell things, because you wouldn't have had Oxford on the beach at that point when we played them, but we managed to get the win, and it was one of those where they had a lot of the game, they had a lot of chances. They should have scored really, so they should have got an equaliser, but we dug in, we had that fight about us. Maybe the pressure got to them a little bit, and they just didn't quite hit their chances with quite the level of conviction they wanted to. But also, fairness, a lot of that is just to do with Trev's individual performance that game. But like you say, you can never really know how these. We can make all the theories we want, but we just don't know. But like you say, they are a far cry from the beast they were last season. It's at home, so I'd like to think we can put something. You know, I know we've had a couple of disappointing ones recently with Peterborough and Charlton, but overall our home record has still been incredibly good. And yeah, we need to just get the atmosphere up and show them that fight really. And I think it sounds like the players know what they've kind of done wrong these past couple of games. Obviously, I've mentioned already, Donald Love. It's, you know, whenever they're kicking the ball away from Faz, we're not doing enough to win it. And I think I've not actually listened to the interview, but I've listened to Derek's interview today with Danel Simeo, and I think he alluded to the fact that Simeo had said that they maybe weren't showing the right attitude or a level of aggression needed in some of those duels. I think Derek actually defended Danel and said it's not necessarily attitude or lack of effort. It's just making sure that you're aware and you're sharp to them, and that you and it's not, because I think we go back again to last season. I think when players lose their duels and stuff, it's not necessarily always just down to effort. It's just there's such a variety of things that can be going on in your head, and you might just switch off at the wrong moment, maybe because you're a young player who just doesn't know the game quite as well. So hopefully lessons have been learned from the way we've lost these kind of deals and one-on-one situations, especially from set pieces in the past couple of games. And hopefully that's something we can kick on from, because if we put together a performance with the same level of intensity that we managed against Bolton, for example, the other week, and snap into those duels and make sure we're first to those balls, even if we don't always win them, make it hard for them, make it hard for the player to turn, etc. If we can do that level of intensity against an Oxford coming here, then we've got a really, really good chance of winning.
And it's interesting what you said before, James, and I'll take the quote and use it because I think it's quite a good one. In the fact that Derek was very successful last year when we'd hit a really, really bad patch. In basically, we had the break for internationals, and he did a fantastic job of, as you called it, circling the wagons. And I think we need a little bit of that mindset again, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We absolutely do. And again, it's one of those. There's some that just think, no, it's just down to the players and the manager. It's not down to anybody else. It's just not true. It's absolutely not true. There's clubs you just do not want to go to around the world, and they're always the clubs that punch above the weight. They're always the clubs that do better than they should. Nobody wants to go and play away in Turkey in the Champions League because it's just not nice, not fun. Not fun being at Fenerbahce or Galatasaray away on a Wednesday night. And they do perform better than they probably should because of that. And I'm not saying we should turn ourselves into Galatasaray, but I am saying that everybody's got a role to play. Like every single person associated with the club. There's not a person in the club who is giving up, not even close. None of us are going to blink, not one of us. And that's got to course through everybody who walks into the Mazuma on a Saturday, and every one of the fantastic people that travel up and down the country. Like we've all got to be absolutely up for it, because if we're not, then yeah, we will get beaten, because we are trying to do more with less, and that's just that. We can't change that. We haven't got a millionaire sugar daddy, so we are always going to have to do more with less, and that's worked well for the vast majority of in fact, for all of Morecambe's history, that's worked well. But we can't do it if people start to blink, start to lose faith, start to give up. And my views on giving up. I absolutely hate it. If we are literally requiring a 6-0 win at Exeter on the last game of the season in order to stay up, I won't have given up until they've scored 3. I genuinely will not. And you just don't. You never know what's going to happen in football. If people gave up, then Ferguson would never, ever, ever have got to create the legacy at United that he did. Because for 3.5 years, United were rubbish, absolutely awful, abject, almost relegated one season. And yet, because he had the chance to build something and get things as he wanted them to be, he went on to be arguably one of the greatest managers in this country. And if for anybody who's listening to this and saying, you're comparing Derek to Alex Ferguson, well, yeah, I am actually. Because Derek, in 3.5 years, has saved us, gained promotion, saved us again, and now he's battling against League One clubs with a budget 4 and 5 times the size of ours. So yeah, I am comparing. In the same period of time, Derek's done more than Ferguson did at United. Fact.
I like that. And that's a good positive note.
He's got more promotions.
Definitely got more promotions.
Yeah. We just need our version of the class of 92. So Adam Mayer's the first, bring on the rest.
Yeah.
So James, interestingly, you mentioned the millionaire sugar daddy there. I'm not going to ask you about what the situation is there, because I know you'll say no comment because nothing's changed. Am I right?
Nothing's changed, but I will say that how protracted the process has been enormously challenging for people like Ben and Derek, who are trying to plan for future seasons and trying to work out what to do in order to put the club and the squad in the best possible place. So how protracted the process is, which is, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, is a massively, massively, massively challenging thing to deal with for people in the club. And I just ask, people who are, concerned about apparent attitude to consider the fact that if you don't know who's owning you, it's quite distracting, and it's quite difficult to do your job every single day knowing that's the case. So how protracted this process has been has definitely not helped us. But then equally, we're still absolutely in the fight. Despite that, I think that this process would have killed most of the other clubs around us, but it hasn't killed us. We're still fighting. So yeah, that's all I'll say on the process. It's been long and painful, and it's still going. And so, you have to give credit to the people who've just brushed it off and got on with doing the jobs.
Anything else for us from the boardroom or from the club itself?
No, just to say, this is Morecambe. We do this. This is what we do. How many times have we written off? How many times have we had to defy the odds? When I first met Derek, it was at Plymouth Argyle away. We were second from bottom. It was a miserable Tuesday night. It pissed it down, and we got humped after. I've forgotten who it was. I do. I've got his shirt.
Richie Sutton.
Yeah, Richie Sutton gave away the most awful penalty, and
It was.
It was terrible, absolutely terrible. And at that point, we were written off, and we weren't just written off. We were going out of the Football League.
Yeah.
If you believe the bookies, and that was 3 years ago. So yeah, we've just got to do what we do, and do it again. But this time, do it in League One with 4,500 fans in the Mazuma rather than 1,800, and really, not be grateful for where we've got to, but embrace where we've got to and try and kick on.
And my next question is, do you call that a gilet or a body warmer?
Because it's Morecambe, I'd say it's a body warmer. If it wasn't Morecambe, I'd say it was a gilet.
Yeah, my son's been, when my eldest son sports one of those, and I say, I call it a body warmer. He goes, "Dad, it's a gilet, Dad, get with the plan." And I'm like, it's just a bloody jacket with the arms cut off. So
the funny thing is, until I started wearing these, if I saw somebody else wearing one, I'd be like, "Are you expecting a flood?" But I'm saying that now.
I just thought I didn't know they did body gilets, body warmers, whatever. It's quite smart. So yeah, you're always sporting something. I was on a course last week at the Midland, and I wore my new, and it got so many admiring glances. The new sweatshirt, the triple coloured one, the white, red, and black. Fantastic. Some good stuff on in the shop. Get yourself into the shop, everybody, and buy something. There you go. Hey, I've done my bit for Natalie in the shop. She'll be killing me on Saturday if it gets busy. Joel, anything from the trust? I presume we're going to be talking about the race night, which is coming up.
Yes, yeah, just that really. Obviously, the race night still on Good Friday after the Plymouth game. There are I've checked in. There are a couple of races still available. They're £25 to sponsor, so you get a name of the race and also pick the names of the horses. So yeah, if that's something you're interested in, you want to get involved with that, either get in touch with the trust or contact Paul Carter, and then we'll be able to help you sort it out.
And just a quick one, we were talking just before we came on air. Just a quick heads up, we'll talk about it more next week, but the ladies the Morecambe women are at home on Sunday the 26th. Is that right? 26th, 27th?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, which would be fantastic if you're listening to go. It's not, thankfully it's not this Sunday because that's Mothering Sunday, but it's a Sunday following Sunday, and it would be fantastic for us to get. I know you said tickets were selling well. Is that right, James?
Yeah, I think quite a lot of people have taken up hospitality, and we're hoping for as many people as possible to come down. This game's been meaning to happen for a while, and this is the first of regular fixtures for the women at the Mazuma. But yeah, as many people should get down there as possible. Obviously, it's her game too. Is being marked this weekend, and so there'll be, we'll make a point of supporting that because it's a fantastic thing. But yeah, the women are playing at the Mazuma, and that's the first of a regular occurrence. And so please get down to the Mazuma and watch them and enjoy it.
And I think we were sort of jokingly saying we'd like to beat the attendance that Lancaster City get at Giant Axe in the Northern Premier League. And I think that's a fair thing. I've nothing against Lancaster, nothing at all. I quite Lancaster. I like Lancaster as a club. I like them as a team. And obviously, when I was young and growing up, they always finished above us in the Northern Premier League, and they got bigger crowds. So I absolutely hated them then, but now I don't really now. So there you go. So
I'd like us to beat Lancaster's attendance and also our own attendance back in the early 90s when I was going to Morecambe.
Yes, exactly, and that's fair.
Let's beat ourselves. Let's beat ourselves when I was a teenager. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I always trot this stat out at times like this. But the night that we lost to Bangor City, there was 181 people there. What was the score? Do you remember? 9-0 to Bangor.
You've never mentioned that before.
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly, I can still name you 2 or 3 people who I still speak to who were there that night. And I think you should get a bloody T-shirt with I was one of the 181. So, God, yeah, exactly. 9-0 at home. And like I say, I think about 4 or 5 when we were from outside the box. There was a fantastic evening. I'll never forget it because you don't, do you? And I do always say this after the defeat midweek. I did exactly the same thing as I've always done. You sit there at the final whistle, stand there at the final whistle, clapping, going, "Well, that was crap." Talk to your mates, and then what do we turn around to each other? Exactly the same as we did when we walked out from the Bangor City game. See you Saturday. It's just what you do, isn't it? It's just what you do. You're either in it or you're not, and that's the way it is. Final thing I just want to talk about: people are perfectly entitled to voice their displeasure at home games and away games with what they consider to be lack of effort or certain players not doing what they should, etc., etc. I get that, but the only thing I'll say is that doing what I did and doing what you do and doing what you do, if somebody's on your back telling you you're crap at it, does it do you any good? No. The one thing that does you good is people backing you saying you can do better. Come on, you can do better. So I get why people booed at halftime and booed at the final whistle. I don't agree with it myself, but I get it. But if we could all be a bit more positive, it probably help us in this situation. Do you agree?
Yeah, I imagine it will. So let's get behind them Saturday. Just make a bit of a noise, and it's a tough ask for Oxford. There's a lot of pressure on them, so let's crank it up and make them feel it.
James?
Yeah, if you're getting bullied and one of your mates hits the deck, you don't flag him off. You lift him up and you get behind him, and that's what we've got to do. I just cannot consider giving up at any point, and I hate it when people do. I respect people's opinions, as I've said a million times, but this is a time with 9 games left for us to absolutely get together and show the rest of the league what we're all about and do it again and make everybody look stupid again. I mean, I'm looking forward to the final podcast after the Exeter game when people up and down the country are saying, "Shit, how have they done it again? How have they done it again?" I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and just all you've got to do is think back. Not that long ago, we were in exactly the same situation when we went to Coventry City. And look what happened that day. And we survived. And look at us now. It only takes like that and things can change. So keep the faith. This has been ShrimpNet number 30, which has gone remarkably quickly. Thank you, James. Thank you, Joel, as usual. Thank you for listening. Hopefully we'll have something a bit more positive to talk about next Tuesday. But do keep the faith, and we'll see you all on the terraces.